Warwick students have been reassured that most will not be impacted by the ongoing Universities and Colleges Union Marking and Assessment Boycott, which started last Thursday, the 20th of April. The boycott will cover all summative marking and assessment, which will also include assessment-related activities like exam invigilation. At the beginning of April, UCU members nationally voted to reject pay and conditions proposals presented at negotiations with employers. This extends the mandate for the UCU to call industrial action for a further 6 months. At the same time, members voted to move forward with proposals surrounding pensions. This boycott can continue until the dispute is settled, the UCU calls off the industrial action, or the end of the mandate is reached. Dr. Clare Rowan is co-chair of Warwick UCU. I started off by asking her how we got into this position of a marking and assessment boycott.
Essentially, what happened is that you will remember the strikes from last term, and then the university employers and the unions, all the unions of the campus, not just UCU, went into negotiations and long talks with a service called ACAS, which is designed to sort of help bring a resolution to the dispute. And so that was in connection to the dispute in terms of pay and conditions, and at the same time we were having discussions about the pensions. And I'm pleased to say actually that the strike action has had a result in terms of pensions. So members, or the UCU members, agreed that we would note this progress and suspend action for the time being on that. In terms of the pay and conditions dispute, the outcome of the talks was that the pay offer that was offered previously, which is for most people 5%, was thought not to be high enough. And that's not just UCU saying that, that's the other campus unions as well. But more importantly, I think all we were offered in terms of the issues in terms of pay gaps, casualisation, workload, we were offered further talks to create a framework. And members voted on this, and I think most members thought that it wasn't concrete enough. We want a commitment to end pay gaps, to reduce workload where it's unmanageable. And I think, seeing as this dispute has been now going on for many, many years, members just didn't trust that further talks, we could go into talks for another year and then not have a result. So I think the reason the marking and assessment boycott was called is that we are really looking for commitments from the universities, from our employers, to actually make genuine progress on these issues.
And as you say, not strike action, but this marking and assessment boycott, which is going to impact the students taking assessments, graduations. So what would you say to students who may be concerned about all of the effort that they've put into their degrees and potentially going to have frustrations or potentially struggles from the university in getting their degrees?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, anyone undertaking the marking assessment boycott, it breaks us. Our dispute is not with you. We love to work with you. But unfortunately, employers have put us in such a position that we've had to call this because I think even though it's breaking our hearts to do it, we're being broken in every other way by the conditions that we're suffering. And I think I would clarify that actually a marking and assessment boycott is just a delay of marking. So we're not saying we're not going to mark. We're just saying we're going to delay the marking until we have some movement, until we have something acceptable. So the idea about that is that the hope is, and the reason it was implemented is that then employers are motivated to resolve this very quickly. We don't want this dragging into next year, affecting students again. We want to resolve it quickly. And I think, we are reaching a place where it could, I think, be resolved quickly. And so what our hope is that employers come back with concrete proposals, and then we're like, thank you very much, we will now mark. So it's not that we're not going to mark, and I'll say it's only marking that we're delaying. We're still here to support you preparing for exams, to provide suggestions and assistance to teach you, to write job references, to help you with applications. And if students do find themselves in a situation where they're like, oh, I'd really need a mark or something is missing, I'm putting in an application, we're more than happy to write these references for you, being like, so-and-so is a top 2-1 student, and due to industrial action, there are some issues, but I can, confirm that they are worthy and blah, blah, blah. So we will do everything we can to kind of help you through this. And what I would hope is that students can see it's actually I would think, better than strike action, because we're still here, we're still around, we're still supporting you in every other way in that regard. So, yeah, and so the hope is that employers will quickly kind of return to discussions, and this can all be resolved rather quickly and well before week 10.
And staff will be facing a 50% deduction in pay during this period of time. Are you confident that your members will be engaging with this marking assessment boycott?
So Warwick did come out recently and announce a 50% deduction. The union is now locally negotiating with them to try and make things more proportional. So I think it's worth students knowing sort of the broader context. So we announced the marking and assessment boycott, and the reaction from our employers, not just Warwick, but the conglomerate of universities, UCU, was that the immediate reaction was that there should be a 100% deduction of salary for staff and a minimum of 50%. And I'll point out that marking, it's only just a small part of our job, and according to our workloads, an even smaller part than it actually takes. And so what I find, and I think most, or pretty much all UCU members, and even staff who aren't UCU members, find very disappointing, is that instead of coming back to us and saying, okay, let's open negotiations again, the reaction from the employers has been to say, we're just going to deduct your entire salary for 3 months. So some staff in some universities are basically not going to get paid for 3 months because they don't mark an essay, or they don't send an email with a mark in it. And then for that tiny action, they will lose 3 months' salary. No money whatsoever. I hope that students can see that this kind of reaction actually is unfortunately indicative of the kind of the conditions that we have to sort of put up with all the time. And I think kind of exemplifies why we're actually in dispute. Unfortunately, it also distracts entirely from trying to resolve the dispute. And I think, I'm pretty sure that the reason the employers propose these deductions, which are punitive and well out of proportion to the actual work involved, and actually probably also infringe upon the human rights of staff, is that they're hoping to bully staff into not participating in industrial action, which is their legal right. And, the law states that you should be entitled to undertake industrial action when it's legally mandated, and that you shouldn't be kind of bullied out of it. And so it's quite unfortunate, I think, that UCU has gone down this road. So as I say, locally we are still talking with Warwick, and the final scheme is not yet finalised. But as a sector, I think what's happened is the announcement that for not sending an email you're going to lose 3 months of salary has just angered people, unfortunately, and made them far more committed to trying to get justice in the sector than before. So I think it's backfired on them, unfortunately.
And you've mentioned the fact that this is a national dispute. What action would you like to see Warwick take in this regard?
Yeah, I would think that Warwick should become like a leader in the sector. And, at these meetings with UCS, say, why aren't we returning to discussions to solve this quickly? Warwick management are saying our priority is to get students graduated. If that is the priority, let's solve this quickly, and we can all get back to work, submit the marks, and then hopefully then, with a concrete commitment, then industrial action won't spill over into next year either. We can all kind of put our energies into improving the sector.
Yeah, Dr. Clare Rowan, thank you very much.
No worries.
Raj Jethwa, Chief Executive of the group representing universities, the UCEA, has said that higher education institutions respect employees' right to take lawful industrial action, and, in turn, UCU needs to respect the employer's right to withhold pay for not fulfilling contracts. In an email to students, Academic Registrar Adam Child has encouraged students to prepare for exams and assessments as usual. There'll be a further update next week, and those who face potential disruption will be contacted by their academic department and the institutional student communication team. A University of Warwick spokesperson said, "We can confirm continuing industrial action from the UCU involving a national marking and assessment boycott across over 100 universities. We are concerned about any potential impact on our students' assessments and thank them and our staff for their patience as we work through this period of disruption." The vast majority of students will not be impacted by the marking boycott, with most members of staff at Warwick not members of the UCU union. So with the impact of the industrial dispute and the current boycott being worked out between the union and universities, students will continue to prepare for their end of term assessments. This has been James Lewis for Raw News.